For the first quarter of our lives, our brains are filled with formulas and equations and reading materials, many of which we don't even remember as adults. And yet the most important role that we need to prepare for in life is as parents. But there aren't that many classes and resources available for how important this role truly is. So let's see if AI can help. The focus of this episode of the Promptsmith's Almanac is on how to be a better father. Fatherhood is something that is essentially the core identity of who I am, and you almost have to roll with that. You know, when I was a kid, I really loved sports, and I still do. But I loved playing and watching sports, and I particularly loved watching football. My son, by contrast, he really doesn't get into watching sports nearly as much as I do. And he doesn't really get into playing sports as much as I do either. His love is dinosaurs, and I was never into dinosaurs growing up, so I can't really relate to him like that. So I've almost had to, well, not almost, I've had to take an active interest in dinosaurs in order to better relate with and connect with my son. Now, with my daughter, her thing is music, so we connect in that way. But if you would have seen me at age 5-year-old Josh wouldn't have been friends with my kids, you know. But you have to expand your mindset on, you know, who you are and how you can relate to your kids, and that's something I've learned as a dad. The parenting books that I've read, and I'll go into greater detail on those specific books later on, but the takeaways from those are you're going to have to adjust your parenting style to your kids and not force your parenting approach on them. My biggest piece of advice to parents is you literally have to take it as a journey one day at a time, because if you try to zoom out to 1,000 feet, it's going to scare the hell out of you. And I mean that. I mean, if I look at the big picture and I'm like, what are my kids going to be like? What's going to happen over the next, you know, even 6 months? The anxiety that produces is just, it almost makes it like it paralyzes you. But there's so much negativity out in the world that, you know, raising kids who are proud of who they are and comfortable in their own skin, I think that's the biggest thing. I feel my wife and I, our biggest responsibility. You know, I think it's important to further your knowledge as a parent, and that's why we're going to be getting some perspectives from AI, because, you know, like it or not, AI can help with your personal life. I've got my Dad Gang hat on. I've got my Mario shirt, which I always wear on days where my son and I play video games. We play Nintendo together, so stoked about this episode because I think it's got a lot of practical use for anybody who is a parent or is curious, wanting to be a parent someday. You know, I would encourage you to learn as much as you can, but know that everyone says it, but it's true. Kids do not come with a manual. I wish that they did at times, because the first night that our oldest was home from the hospital, he slept in his car seat on our bed, and we slept on the floor because we had no idea what we were doing and we were exhausted. And it does get easier as time goes on. You know, you get into the rhythm of it, the routine of it. I'd say the first 6 months with our oldest were the toughest, and then that was the case, I think, with our youngest as well. It's just, you know, it's an adjustment. Your body has to completely readapt to what sleep looks like, what rest in general looks like. I'm trying to think of what other areas as a parent. I think too, like, you know, breaking it down by age. maybe having one prompt that just focuses on that first 6 months, and then having another one that focuses more on the toddler years, which is where we are currently, and then looking ahead to, like, strategies to really emphasize self-esteem and promoting that in your kids in their preteen years, so that, as they head into high school and college, they have a good sense of who they are, and they have a good sense of who they could be in life, to wake up in the morning satisfied with themselves as people. Because I know I haven't always been comfortable in my own skin, and it took me longer to start this venture than I would have liked, and I think a lot of that was internal. I think a lot of that was psychological, and I think that the greatest enemy that we often face in our lives is ourselves, and I want my kids to be able to do battle with themselves and win. All right, so today for this parenting prompt, I'm actually prompting in Perplexity. I haven't used it much, so we'll see how it goes. Okay, so the prompt we're running with here, you are an expert in parenting the first 6 months of a child's life. Providing peer-reviewed insights, list 10 practical tips for new fathers to remain committed and engaged in aiding their child's physical, social, and emotional development. Want to make sure we hit all three, just to see how holistically we can work to improve as fathers. And let's see what AI has to offer here. All right, so I read through everything. I'm going to count down and go in reverse order here, starting with 10. Practice self-care and balance. This is an important one, and one that I think dads in particular often overlook. I'm definitely guilty of not practicing self-care and balance at times. And it can be like, this isn't just, like grooming or, making sure you look presentable. It's taking time to really develop yourself as a human and remind yourself that you still have a life outside of being a father. All right, seek support and education. Yeah, this one, I said earlier, kids don't come with a manual, but fortunately for us, millions of other parents have spoken to or written about their experiences, and we can learn from those, and we should learn from those. One book I've read in particular that I really like is Good Inside, Dr. Becky. It's really helped me to become a more relaxed and understanding father. I've still got a long way to go, and support groups can be helpful too. If you have other friends who are going through similar things as fathers, lean on that, lean on them, and there are things that they're going to do that work. There are things that you're going to do that work. Pull your resources and improve. Share your skills and interests. Okay, I talked a little bit about how my son is not that interested in playing or watching sports. That doesn't mean that I don't try. I have gotten him into watching golf videos, watching different golfers, play on the PGA Tour. He has watched the Super Bowl and enjoyed that. So there are areas where I'm able to, provide those interests of mine. So for the first 6 months of a child's life, so far, practicing self-care and balance, huge. Seeking support and education, sharing your skills and interests with your child. And honestly, some of these weave in and out of each other, because I think that's a form of self-care as well. It's just retaining that identity. Be a positive role model. Yes. Every time I have felt short and fallen short as a dad, has been when I've gotten overly angry in front of my kids, and they see it, and now they're left to process that and what it means. I remember when my dad would get angry when I was a kid, and I hated it, and I disliked him in those moments, and I didn't want to be like him. And no matter how hard you try, when that's part of your experience, sometimes it is what it is, and you just work on it, and you have to try to get better. I came of age where growing up, my parents didn't apologize when they were out of line or hurt my feelings, made mistakes. So that is one thing that, we try to do a little bit differently. But read, sing, and communicate. I don't care if you don't like to sing. I don't care if you're a bad singer. Kids like singing. They just do. And it can be fun too. Like, you don't have to sing The Wheels on the Bus 100 times if you don't want to. You can totally sing, God, what are some weird songs that I've sung? The Sound of Silence, Simon and Garfunkel. Yeah, I've sang that. Just like Tom Thumb's Blues, Bob Dylan. That's in the regular rotation. To my kids, I've sung K-pop songs because they like K-pop music. Learn about infant development. Okay, to me this kind of goes along with seek support and education. So some of these are weaving more than anticipated. If you are a new parent or you're not a parent but want to be at some point, the anxiety is absolutely crippling, and especially in those first 6 months. And you're responsible for this little life, and you desperately want to keep them safe and keep them nourished and give them the absolute best introduction to life that they could ask for. Play and physical activity. Tummy time's always fun when they're little. That's one thing I miss about the first 6 months is just, all right, participate in daily routines. We are probably one of the most routine-oriented households that you will find, and our kids are very, very into their routines, and it helps to set those expectations and give some semblance of control in a world that often feels confusing. Foster a positive relationship with your partner if you have a partner. I do think that's very important to have your kids be able to see you work through conflict together, to see that that you can problem solve, that there is harmony in the house. I think that it creates that extra layer of comfort for them to feel like they can be themselves fully. If you and your partner are able to be yourselves fully, and you retain your individual identities, you retain your respect and appreciation for each other, and you don't lose sight of the values that brought you together. I am a big believer in the things that I think sustain, whether it's marital, romantic partnerships, what have you, co-parenting partnerships. Respect is a big one, but you have to have the same core values. You really do, because if the things most important to your worldview aren't the same as your partner, it can get difficult when the issues do come up, because they will. There's going to be tension, conflict, issues, and you're going to have to work through them together. Be present and responsive is listed as number 1 here. You can just treat them like a little person at times, have conversations with them. They're not going to talk back those first 6 months in all likelihood, but eye contact is a big one. That's always fun when they're laughing and smiling. And all in all, I think that's a pretty accurate list. And this kind of goes along with practice self-care and balance, but I would also say be patient with yourself. Bonding does take time, and it's different for everybody. I was always told that the moment your child is born, it's going to rock your world. You're going to cry, and you're going to feel all these emotions right away. It's just miraculous, and I didn't experience that with either of my kids. And there is no experience in this world quite like it. So I wish you all the best wherever you are in your parenting journey. And yeah. So if you liked this episode, do hit that subscribe button and check the description for additional resources.